She has left lasting scars on my life that will never go away. I want to post this disclaimer up front that there's a lot of sensitive stuff talked about in this video, and if you are triggered by any kind of graphic detail of these kinds of stories, then you should not watch this video at all. It was triggering for me to relive the experience, so if you are sensitive to any of those kinds of things or around somebody who is sensitive to these kinds of things, then definitely don't watch this. I was physically and psychologically abused by a woman that I was in a relationship with on and off for about 5 years. I'm sharing my story in the hopes that it will help someone else that's going through a similar situation. This is something that's been eating away at me for over 15 years. She wasn't the first woman to physically abuse me, but she was definitely the last. I'd always heard that women would go from one abusive relationship to another, that statistically that is common, and I never really understood why. It's called re-victimization, and as I learned the hard way, it's a very real thing. Data shows that around 29% of women and around 10% of men will experience some kind of abuse from an intimate partner in their lifetime. According to some surveys, around 44% of domestic violence cases go unreported. Obviously, that's a difficult number to pin down because it's hard to report on things that haven't been reported. Whether that's perfectly accurate or not is really irrelevant. A lot of domestic violence cases do go unreported. People don't tell authorities or report it on surveys for a lot of obvious reasons. What I wonder is how many men don't report being abused by their partners just simply because of the stigma that's attached to it. I'm not saying that there aren't women who don't report for the same or similar reasons, and I'm not trying to diminish anything traumatic that anyone has experienced or gone through. But in this, I'm mostly going to be focused on the male victim aspect of physical domestic violence in straight relationships because that was my experience. And I'm making this to share my story. Society at large has this understanding or expectation that men shouldn't be quote unquote victims of domestic violence, that they're tough, that they're strong, that a woman can't hurt them. Men are not supposed to admit vulnerability or be vulnerable in any way. This leads to a lack of recognition, reporting, and fewer resources for men who are going through this. Culturally, it's more acceptable for women to hit men, whether that's just being playful or whether that's through aggression or frustration. And you can see this reinforced in TV shows and movies. Maybe a lot of these societal factors will eventually diminish or be non-existent as we continue to move forward as a society and accepting people of different gender identities or different gender roles. But in my opinion, domestic violence or violence against a partner for any reason is never okay, regardless of gender identity. In my situation, I fell into so many of these traps. I am a large man. I'm over 6 feet tall and 200 pounds. A woman's not supposed to be able to hurt me.
Attacked with football moves and tackles and punched, kicked in the face.
He had been assaulted by her before, but this time the beating was particularly savage.
I was completely embarrassed when the police showed up and I was naked, covered in my own blood. I didn't want to admit what had happened to me. Even then, I wanted to shoulder the blame myself. I wanted to protect the perpetrator, and I did that for years after. My relationship was not going well. We argued all the time, and it was miserable to be around each other. I traveled a lot for work. The week before I was about to go on this trip, it was particularly miserable. It was nonstop arguing. She finally told me that she was tired of all of it. She was tired of being with me and that things were better when I wasn't there. She said she didn't want to be with me anymore. To me, that meant that we were done. I went on my business trip and I was gone for about a week. We didn't talk the entire time I was gone, except for one phone call right after I got there. And we argued about all of the same things that we had argued about before, and ended up in the same place, the same conclusion. She didn't want to be with me. To me, when somebody tells you that means you're breaking up. You're not going to be together. I spent the first part of that trip feeling sorry for myself and trying to preoccupy myself with other things and bury myself in work. It was miserable. After a few days and a lot of crying, sleepless nights, I felt like I needed to do something for myself. I was in a busy town that's very well known for its sin.
Vegas, baby, Vegas!
I've been there before many times for work, but I don't gamble or do anything like that. So I never really went out. I would usually stay in my hotel room and play video games, or I'd go lounge by the pool when I wasn't working. I was stressed, I felt overwhelmed, and I thought that a massage might help me relax. And I know what you're thinking, but it wasn't that, I promise you. She only gave me a massage. However, during the massage, we would chit-chat a bit, talked about each other's lives. We joked around a bit, and she knew I was in town for a trip, and so I asked her what stuff is there to do that's not the normal tourist thing, that isn't gambling, that isn't casinos. I wanted to get advice from a local, what I should do in town. And so she gave me some ideas. Then I made a joke that she should show me around. She should do some of these things with me. And to my surprise, she accepted. That evening, I picked her up at her house and she took me around to see some cool places that I had never been. We went out to dinner, we went dancing, and honestly, up to that point in my life, I was about 29, and it was one of the best, most fun nights that I had ever had. When I dropped her off at her house, we kissed. That was all that we ever did. It was a PG-rated vacation ship. We spent a couple of days doing fun stuff together when I wasn't working. At the end of both of those nights, we kissed. Nothing else other than that ever happened. Before I came back home from my trip, I called my girlfriend and I told her that I wanted to work things out. And in the spirit of that, I was completely honest about what had happened. She was pretty upset finding out that I had kissed somebody. She said that she would pick me up at the airport and that we would talk about it. I just felt like it was important to be honest so that we could start things back off on the right foot. Nothing really happened that first night that I was back. It was pretty much just the cold and distant normal relationship that I had been used to for months prior. I went to work the next day, and the woman that I had met out of town texted me, and it wasn't flirty or anything like that. She knew that my 30th birthday was coming up and asked me if I had any fun plans, and I answered that I think that I was having a party, but I wasn't 100% sure. I didn't give her a lot of details, but honestly, I didn't know what was going to be happening for my 30th birthday because things in my relationship weren't that great. So I don't know. Was I going out on a stag night, or was I going to try to have a party? At the time, the plan was to have a small get together with some family and friends. And so that's what I said I was doing. There was literally no flirtation, no sexting, no risque sensual type text messages, nothing like that. That night was a normal, cold and distant evening with my girlfriend. I went to bed at a pretty normal, early-ish hour, I think, probably around 9, 10-ish or something like that. Well, unbeknownst to me at that time, that night would change my life forever. I was woken up in the middle of the night with fists and claws, nails, and the loudest, most disturbing shrieking that I've ever heard in my life, and I'll never forget the sound of that. Whatever she was screaming, it didn't make any sense. I didn't know what she was saying. I didn't know what was happening. I was still confused and trying to wake up and understand what was happening. Was this a dream? Was it a nightmare? Was I imagining it all? Part of it was probably the anger, and the other part was probably the alcohol. I found out later that she had downed 3 or 4 bottles of wine herself. She was literally clawing at me, digging her fingernails into my face, into my forehead, in my ears, my neck, my arms, my chest, my groin area and thighs, and I was bleeding a lot. My vision kept going blurry, and part of that was her hitting me, and the other part was the blood was dripping into my eyes. I begged her to stop. I asked her what was going on, and all there was screaming, and she wouldn't stop. I didn't fight back. At one point I looked up and I saw above the bed that there was a window open, and so I remember reaching up for the window. It was one of those ones that crank, and so I was cranking the window shut. I remember something about asking her to calm down and talk to me. The neighbors were going to hear. All the while I was closing the window, she just continued hitting me on the back of the head, on the back, digging her nails into my back and my arms, or anywhere that she could connect with. At one point, she did say something coherent, which was, she's screaming, "I could use a massage right now. That's what you said." And I was completely confused, because that was not something I had said. And then I realized she had my phone. She was talking about my phone, and that I had texted a girl that I could use a massage. What I figured out later was that obviously she had stolen my phone, saw that the girl that I had met had texted me, and my girlfriend, took it upon herself to text the girl that I had met, and said she was the one that texted, "I could use a massage right now." At some point, she had decided she was going to text her as me from my phone, probably, I assume, to try to solicit some information out of her or whatever, and in her drunken stupor had forgotten that she was the one that sent that message, and then got plastered, read that, and then used that as that was fueling her anger, thinking that I sent a message that she had forgotten that she actually sent. And later on, she did admit to sending that message. But from there, from the window, I tried to get away from her, because she was just continuing to attack me. And so I walked towards the door. That's where things get really fuzzy for me, because I don't remember exactly what happened. What I do know is that I was unconscious for some period of time. I don't know how long. And I woke up on the floor. Later, as I was sifting through the rubble and the whatever was left of this disaster, there was a wine bottle that was on the floor where I was. I think she might have hit me with a wine bottle on the back of the head. I don't know, but somehow I ended up unconscious on the floor, and I woke up and she was still beating me, attacking me, hitting me with her fist, digging her claws into different parts of my body, just clawing at me. And my vision is still blurry. It still has a crimson hue to it. And I am again confused, because now I'm waking up again to being beaten. But this time I'm on the floor, face up, and the doorway faced the stairs, and I heard some pounding. There was some pounding on the door, and somebody was yelling something. I couldn't make out what they were saying. I don't know. But at some point, I heard the door open and then the footsteps up the stairs and I could see on the ceiling there were flashlights. It was the police, and the police came in and pulled her off of me. They immediately took her into the hallway, and she kept yelling at me, "Tell them that everything is okay. Tell them that everything is okay." And I knew that everything wasn't okay. They knew that everything wasn't okay. I was naked, covered from head to groin in my own blood with gashes all over me. And it was very obviously not okay. They handed me a pair of shorts and to put on to cover myself up. They started asking me a bunch of questions. Meanwhile, she was yelling at me from the hallway, "Tell them everything's okay." And I don't remember exactly what I told the police. I just remember that I declined to make a statement. They were asking me to make a statement about what had happened. I asked if she was going to get arrested, and they said, yeah, that she probably was. I asked the police officer if I could talk to her before they took her to the police car. And they said, no, she doesn't want to talk to you, which I found out was not true. They're just, it's a domestic violence situation. They're keeping people separate. But I was scared for her to be going to jail. I was scared for her in that experience. And I felt guilty. I felt like everything was my fault. I remember telling them that it was my fault that this had happened, that she had done this, and asking them not to arrest her. I declined to make a statement because I didn't want her to get in trouble. I felt like it was my fault. I kept telling them that it was my fault. At some point during the conversation, they took her downstairs because she kept yelling at me through the doorway. And I guess they just wanted to make sure that we had individual conversations and to keep us separate. I don't know. And then they escorted her out and put her in the back of the police car in handcuffs. And then I was alone in the house, just left there alone to deal with the silence and the aftermath and trying to process what had happened. I recorded this video a couple weeks ago now, and it's been a roller coaster of emotion for me ever since. I've had massive anxiety, and I at first didn't really realize where it was coming from. I thought it must be some external factors or something else, but it's been extremely difficult, a lot more difficult than I thought. I didn't think that I would be this impacted by it. There are some things that I left out of the story, not because I didn't want to give a full or complete picture, but because I was afraid about a lot of things, like identifying her and things like that. Like the fact that what I didn't mention is that we had a 2-year-old child together. So when I say she left me alone in the house, really she left me alone in the house with our 2-year-old while she was being carted off to jail for what she had done. I was left to pick up the pieces and figure out what to do from there. Do I press charges? Do I not press charges? What do I do with our child in the morning? Luckily, even with the police there and everything that happened and all of the violence that took place, our child never woke up. Our child stayed asleep the entire night. I, of course, did not sleep at all. She must have called her dad from jail, because her dad called me around 4 a.m. and screaming at me and telling me that it was all my fault that she was in jail, and that whatever happened, it must have been my fault. And I was honest with him. I told him exactly what happened. And he was like, well, there must be more to it. He couldn't even accept what his own daughter had done. And he was berating me at 4 a.m. while I was covered in my own blood and wounds and bruises and everything from his daughter. As I believe I've mentioned, she had an online business that allowed her to work from home, and so she would keep our 2-year-old at home with her. I'm sure you'd wonder, well, what were you guys fighting about and all this? Well, I did not work from home at that time, and I would come home from work, and very often, I would say multiple times a week, she would be passed out drunk while our 2-year-old was running around the house unattended. And her online business involved a lot of metalworking tools that were sharp and dangerous, and the back door would be open. Our child would just be running around the house, running around the backyard, completely unattended, a 2-year-old. So yeah, that was a point of contention. Yeah, that was a huge problem for me. I'm sure you'd wonder, well, why did you go back to her? Why did you bother trying to make it work and all of that? And it was because we had a child. I wasn't sure if I should bring that up in this video. I wasn't sure if that would cause issues. I wasn't sure if I should bring it up, but this is my story, and I think I should be allowed to tell my story and the things that happened to me, the things that she did to me. There's no reason I should be protecting somebody who perpetrated this kind of violence against me. And as I talk about in this video, I have protected her for 15 years because I was afraid of what might happen to her or how people might view her as a mother or as a person. And I was so afraid that anybody would think something negative about her. And I was embarrassed by it. More importantly, I was worried about her reputation as a mother. I had convinced myself for a long, long time, oh, she's not a bad person, and this was my fault, and what she did was because of me and what I did. She convinced me that it was my fault. Gaslighting 101. I felt like I needed to protect her and protect her reputation. I'm tired of doing that. I'm tired of stuffing all of this down, everything that happened to me, out of embarrassment and out of some misguided need to protect her from the consequences of her actions. I talked to her on the phone many times while she was in jail. She was completely indignant. She was completely convinced it was my fault. She was just completely obtuse about everything. I was supposed to feel sorry for her, and she was going through this horrible ordeal, and that was all my fault. It was all my fault she was there. No accountability for her actions, no accountability for her behavior or decisions. Then when I went and visited her in jail, it was the same thing. It was my fault. Everything was my fault. I still didn't make a statement. The prosecutor's office called me multiple times. The victim's advocate contacted me multiple times, and they said that I needed to make a statement and that they wouldn't be able to make a case without my statement, and that people who get physically violent in these situations are likely to do it again, and that I should make the statement and should press charges or have them press charges, whatever. I'm not technically pressing charges. I'm just giving them a statement and essentially providing them the evidence they need to take the next step. But I refused to do that at every turn because I felt guilty. I felt like everything was my fault. Eventually, they just dropped the charges against her. 2.5 days later, she was released from jail, and I picked her up. And I stayed in a relationship with her for the better part of another year, at least. Obviously, things didn't work out. It's taken me years to process the trauma of what actually happened. I can't believe that I stayed with her for any period of time after that. Over time, I finally realized that I shouldn't have placed the blame on myself. In the relationship directly prior to this one, I was cheated on. My fiance disappeared one night, didn't come home until 3 or 4 in the morning. She had been with her ex-boyfriend, and they had at least kissed, maybe more. I don't know if I'll ever know the truth of what actually happened that night, but I know what didn't happen, and that's that I didn't get physical with her. I wasn't arrested by police, because that's not the appropriate response to anything if you feel like somebody cheated, which, again, I understand it's a little bit of a Ross.
We were on a break.
I don't think that anyone should be beat or bloodied for any reason. If you don't want to be in that relationship or don't want to be with that person, then don't be with them. You don't attack them. The thing about that relationship where I was cheated on is that I blamed myself in that situation too. I wasn't good enough or desirable enough, and I needed to better myself in ways so that I wouldn't be cheated on. That I just wasn't desirable enough, and that if I became desirable enough, then I wouldn't be somebody who would be cheated on. In a relationship prior to that, I was physically abused by a woman who, when she got angry, would box my ears or slam my head against the wall. At one point, chased me with a fire poker. I think you see the pattern here. I blamed myself in all of these situations. I wasn't good enough. I wasn't good looking enough. I wasn't in a good enough shape. If I was just desirable enough, then people wouldn't abuse me. Then people wouldn't cheat on me. I am of the opinion that I have accountability for my behavior, what I did, kissing someone. I take accountability for that. Did I deserve to be physically abused for that? I don't think so. When my girlfriend and I at that time tried to work things out, it didn't get better. The victim's advocate was right. She did continue to physically attack me. And in fact, when she was drunk and mad at me, she would do things like slam her head against the wall to leave marks on her head. And I would say, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? And she said it was because if the cops showed up again, she wanted to look like the victim so that I would be arrested. It was sick. It's sick and so twisted. One of my biggest regrets in life was not making that statement and filing that statement and ensuring that she faced the consequences for what she did. I should have done that. Would she have learned anything from it? I don't know. But at least she would have faced some real world consequences. I protected her from the consequences of her own actions, and I'm the one who paid the price for it in a lot of ways, and in a lot of ways that I won't talk about here. I've intentionally left out information about us, about her, specifically, and about our relationship, as to not identify her. My goal is not to identify her with this video. My goal is to share my story in the hopes that it might help. It's difficult for men who have been abused by women to talk about it. There's a lot of shame involved and embarrassment. I'm still embarrassed by it. But I don't want somebody else going through this situation to make the same mistakes that I did. And I hope that my story can help someone else. I mentioned earlier that there was psychological abuse as well, and I didn't elaborate on that. I really only elaborated on this one instance of physical violence, and then some things that happened sort of after that, in the aftermath of that. I kind of wanted to get into that a little bit, actually. I wasn't sure if I wanted to talk about it, but given everything that I'm already experiencing, the high anxiety and everything from revisiting all of this that I really did not anticipate, I think it's important to get it all out and just allow myself to feel whatever it is I need to feel as a part of that process. Because in my stupid brain, I just thought, I've dealt with it. I'm fine. I'm strong. I'm tough. I'm capable of just moving forward and not having to deal with it or feel whatever it is that I'm feeling right now. So as I mentioned, I kept her secret from my family. I didn't tell anybody about what she had done out of embarrassment and also to protect her reputation. I didn't want any of my family or friends to think badly about her or anyone to think badly about her. I cared about her, and I cared about her reputation, and I cared about what people might think of her if they found out about this stuff. So I kept it all a secret. And so my family didn't know anything about it. But after the instances, repeated instances of her pulling the things that she pulled, like where she was hitting her own head on the wall to try to get me in trouble, I realized this is an unhealthy, safe relationship. So eventually I left. As soon as we split up, she wouldn't let me see my son unless I came to her house and had sex with her. She literally would not let me see him. She wouldn't let me take him anywhere, wouldn't let me do anything with him unless I came to the house. And when I came to the house, she would play every type of psychological game with me. She would wear risque clothing. She would use things from my past or my family history to try to manipulate me into coming back to her. And so it was literally her using our child as a pawn so that I would come back and see her. I wasn't allowed to spend any time with him. And you're like, well, why would you put up with that? I don't know. I think honestly, I was afraid. When a couple splits up and they have a kid, the mom gets primary custody and the dad gets every other weekend, and that's it. I literally just put up with every game she wanted to play in order for me to be able to see my son, and doing what I thought was best to avoid the stress and pitfalls of the court system 15 years ago. What I didn't realize at the time, and I see now in retrospect, is that one, I should have cooperated with the prosecution. I should have filed for custody of my child at that time. She should be a convicted felon, and I should have custody of my kid. That's what should have happened. And it's my fault that I didn't do that. It's my fault that I didn't listen to the victim's advocate. It's my fault that I didn't file for custody at that time. I thought I was doing the right thing by her, by my child, and I thought that that was the best path. As I mentioned, I didn't tell my family about anything that was going on. I didn't tell them about her physical violence and all of that at the time. And so once I split up with her, she reached out to my family, who she had told me that she couldn't stand and never wanted to spend time with during the time that we were together. She reached out to them and, gave them this big sob story about me leaving her and how she just wanted me back and loved me so much, and basically manipulated them into feeling like I was just a bad guy and leaving her, leaving this poor, innocent, sweet woman, meanwhile leaving out all of the horrible things that she had done to me. And she would plan trips with my parents to go and see my grandfather, who she had no desire to spend time with before, had no desire to spend time with my parents, had no desire to interact with my family. He, meant the world to me, and she knew that with this whole facade of, I'm this sweet, loving, nice person who wants your grandchild to, spend time with you, and so I'm going to facilitate that. Meanwhile, as I mentioned, she did not allow me to have him. So I couldn't take our child to go and spend time with my family or my grandparents. It was so disgusting and manipulative. It wasn't until a long time later that I finally, opened up to my family about some of the things that she had done. And then they finally kind of understood and saw her for who she was. But she was very good at putting a mask on and pretending to be somebody that she wasn't. She wreaked havoc on so many other areas of my life. She caused multiple friendships of mine to end because she lied about things that happened or things they said. And it was all manipulation to try to make me jealous or just mess with my head so that I would come back to her. She made a whole web of fake social media accounts of fake friends and all the stuff. You've seen the movie Catfish. She kind of did what that lady did by creating this whole fake network of people online to try to like manipulate me or get inside information, get friends, because I had private accounts at the time. She was relentless in wreaking havoc on my life in every aspect, from my work to my friends to my family to my child. Every aspect of my life she tried to destroy because I left her after she abused me. She has left lasting scars on my life that will never go away. I don't want to live that kind of life anymore. And I've had a lot of outbursts and frustration with her over the years because of the decisions that she's made, but also because of the decisions that I made in going back to her multiple times and not holding her accountable for her actions. But this is my reality. This is the world that I've lived in for the past 15 years, where I am a man who was abused by a woman and I haven't been allowed to say anything about it. And in fact, I've had to look my abuser in the face for 15 years. I can't tell you how fucking hard that has been. I don't care what gender you are. Nobody should ever have to experience that. I don't think that this is going to get a lot of views. I don't think this is going to amass some any kind of significant attention, and it's not intended to. It's only intended to tell my story so that if there's any other man, even if it's just one other person, honestly, it doesn't have to be a man, it could be anybody that's experienced anything like this, just to let them know that they're not alone. Everything that you're going through and experiencing, and the emotional, the turmoil and the anxiety and the everything that you're experiencing, you're not alone. I have felt very alone over the past 15 years, and I hope this helps somebody not to feel the way that I've felt over that time. You're not powerless, you're not nothing, you're not weak. Sometimes life sucks and it's hard, but you're not going through it alone. And I hope now you know. If you are in an abusive relationship, don't stay. Get help. It's not worth it. Things won't get better. They will continue the same behavior, and it will probably escalate and get worse. You have to take care of yourself physically and emotionally. Get professional help. Talk to a professional. Talk to your friends. Talk to your family. Talk about it to anyone who will listen. Don't suffer in silence. It's not going to focus, is it? Oh, there it goes. But, okay. I know I made this video mostly about, I know I made this video mostly from the perspective, Jesus, this is too loud. Turn that way down. How did that get so much louder though? off. Sound is on. I don't. Why is this so loud now, though? Like we're clipping, clip. I don't understand how. Oh, it's because I turned the gain all the way up on that. God dang it. That's why. Okay, there we go. I know I told this story mostly from the sort of male victim perspective, but I understand that there are victims out there of every gender, and so I hope that nothing about this video made you feel diminished in any way, or your experience feel diminished. This was just my story, so I was telling it from my perspective, but I think everyone who's been through any kind of abusive situation should talk about it and should be heard and deserves to be heard and validated and valued and appreciated. So I just want you to know that if that is what you've gone through, you are valued and you should value yourself. And the more we can all share our stories, the more that we can empower ourselves and take the power away from the people who perpetrated the abuse. If you have been a victim of domestic violence, there is a national domestic violence hotline. It's 1-800-799-SAFE, 1-800-799-7233, and you should call and get the help that you need. Their website is thehotline.org, and you can find out all that information there, but also make sure that you're being careful about the cookies and things that you leave in your browser, because if somebody is being abused and discovers those things, it could make the situation worse before you get out. So use an incognito browser or Tor or something like that. So just be careful out there, and I hope that you are healthy, happy, and safe.